All right, we are back. We're sorry about that. Technical difficulties, vocal difficulties, apparently. But yeah, hey, I think we're back. I was at the very end of the Mountain West. I think I was on Nevada, I believe, when we cut off. So you want me to hit the last two here real quick?
Yeah, Squeeze Money blames Air Force because you were starting to talk about Air Force, so he blames them.
All right, well, they heard me say Air Force. So just as an FYI, we had Nevada at 10th in the conference, 125th overall. New Mexico was the 11th, 201st overall. Again, anxious to see what Bronco Mendenhall can do down there. I'm not sure if it still got us or not when I was talking. But then the last one here, Air Force, as we said, just a different type of recruiting down there. You really can't compare them to the rest of the teams. But they do the best they can. I mean, hell, look what they did this last year here. So I think that about sums it up. Sorry if we maybe got cut off on those last few teams, but I know we want to get to the Big Ten as well, Steve. So let's go ahead. Big Ten. And before we do that, I just want to say for the comments, we did lose some of the comments in the first episode. I remember a few that we can maybe get to, FSU, PAC, things like that. Let's get to the Big Ten, then we can bring up some of the comments.
But if you had a comment that we didn't get to, we didn't address, whatever, you can put it back in there if you want. Keep coming back on, give us those comments again, and we'll get to those before the end of the show. So moving on to the Big Ten, talking about football. Spring ball has started. My section is going to be a little bit different than JY's. He was looking at recruiting. I wanted to talk more about the fact that spring ball has started. At a lot of Big Ten schools. I know Penn State has started. They've had their first practice so far. But what I wanted to focus on this week, and we're going to try and do these weekly. I guess we'll see how many technical difficulties we have. But we would like to start doing these weekly all the way through a run-up to the season. We do want to do more in-depth previews of each team in the Big Ten and the Mountain West. But on these weekly episodes, I just kind of want to talk to people about what's going on in the Big Ten. So before I start doing updates on spring ball and roster movements, over the next few weeks as we move along, I wanted to just talk about some of the new teams. This week I'm going to talk about Washington and Oregon joining, and just kind of introducing them to the conference, to everybody, to the fans, the Big Ten fans that, are not fans of those schools. And then, next week I'll talk about USC and UCLA. So first of all, Washington, coming off of that historic season, just a great season for them. They lose their coach, DeWar going to Alabama. And they lost. They lost so much. They basically lost their entire roster. So many NFL players. So they're starting from scratch as they enter the Big Ten. Yep. But they're starting with new head coach Jed Fish, came over from Arizona.
Yep.
When he was at Arizona, the end of the season, like the preseason polls was showing Arizona up in the top 10, which is amazing that he got that program from where they were to they were going to be a preseason top 10 school this year.
Right.
So, great coaching resume. I think the program's in good hands. It's a shame for Washington Husky fans that, their first year in the Big Ten, they're looking at a program rebuild. But I really think they're in good hands moving forward. So I just want to talk about a few key games that they have in the Big Ten this year against Big Ten teams. So October 5th, they're going to host Michigan. So at a rematch, from the college football playoff, from a championship game. Yeah. So right away, we get out of the gates, we get into October, which is really, that football season. The leaves are turning, all that. And they get to host Michigan up there in Seattle. Should be a great atmosphere. Welcome to the Big Ten. You get to host the defending conference champions. And Michigan's going through a little bit of a rebuild, too. So we have no idea what Michigan's going to look like. Yeah. So I think that'll be a great indicator. Both programs, and just awesome to see Michigan playing at the Washington Huskies.
Right.
Great way to start Big Ten play.
Right.
Or really get involved. The next game, October 12th, they get to visit Iowa.
Okay.
Really cool stadium, really tight confines, very intimate with the crowd. They have the Children's Hospital where everyone does the wave, which is really cool. And Iowa can be a super hostile place to play. Mm-hmm. Teams have gone in there, and it's been, a murderer's row, a nightmare to play there, especially night games. We don't know if that'll be a night game or whatever. But again, welcome to the Big Ten, a road trip to Iowa, playing, I think it's Kinnick Stadium. Just an awesome place to play. That'll be a good test for them, or just a taste of playing Big Ten play on the road.
Then, I hope that's a night game.
Yeah, that'd
be
awesome.
Pretty awesome.
Yes, it's probably going to depend on both of the teams, maybe how their records are at that point or whatever. But that's October 12th. And then we go into November 9th. So they already had to host Michigan. They had to go to Iowa.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be in November. It's cold. The weather's turning. And they're going to travel to Happy Valley, face my Penn State Nittany Lions. 107,000, huge game. That might end up being the whiteout. Probably not. I think the UCLA game will be the whiteout. But still, you expect a big crowd to go in there on November 9th to go visit Penn State. Huge game. Tough place to play. Urban Meyer, before he retired or when he retired, said playing at Penn State, that was his nightmare scenario. That's the playing there. That's the school. That's the place that kept him up at night and gave him nightmares.
Okay.
Was playing there. So, welcome to the Big Ten.
Well, I've said it before. I have to say it again. I would have loved to have seen this past year, the 23 version of the Huskies playing in the Big Ten. I think that would have been so much fun. Not to knock the 2014. I'm sure they're going to be fun too. But with Penix and Odunze and just what they had there, seeing them play in the Big Ten would have been awesome. I hope the best for the Huskies here. I'm going to be anxious to see how they do here. And I see we've got some people finding us as well. We got Squeeze Money back. We got Matt back. We're up to almost 15 here again. So they're finding us again after our technical difficulties.
Yeah, so before I move on, I said this earlier when we didn't have as many people back. If your question didn't get answered, put it in the chat again. We're sorry for our technical difficulties. We want to get back to your questions. We lost them when we had to reconnect. So if you had a question and didn't get addressed, put it back in here. I want to hear from the Knowles fans because I have couple little teasers towards the end of this information that the Knowles fans are going to like, and they're going to get it first if they're on the live episode instead of having to wait for the other episodes.
I always knew you were a teaser.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a tease, yeah.
What are you going to next? The Ducks.
Okay, Ducks. Oregon Ducks, which Matt Kelly's asking about the Ducks. He says the Ducks are going to be just fine.
Yep.
The grass is always green in Eugene. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think the Ducks are going to be more than just fine this year.
Yeah.
I really honestly think it's funny because the whole thing with conference realignment was, we're going to add USC and UCLA. Mm-hmm. Well, to me, and then Oregon and Washington were kind of an afterthought once the pack really started to collapse. Well, to me, the jewel of this group coming in, at least this year, is the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah.
Great team last year. Great coach, Dan Lanning. Just fantastic coach. I had nothing but great things to say about him last year. He has a fantastic reputation, and he decided he could have gone almost anywhere in the country. He could have been the next coach at Alabama or a lot of other places and decided to stay in Eugene with the Oregon Ducks. I think they're absolutely loaded this year. I know you were big on them last year. They lose Bo Nix, who was, supposedly he couldn't win at Auburn. I think that was more of an Auburn problem than a Bo Nix problem because he's gone on and done great things. He did great things with Oregon, and Auburn continued to suck.
Yeah.
So, but they lose him. He's going on the NFL. So what do? They bring in Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma, 49 career starts. You and I talked about this before. One of the best indicators of success in the NFL for quarterbacks is how many starts they had in college. I don't believe anybody in college football starting this year will have as many career starts as Dylan Gabriel. So to me, they're just just reloading.
Absolutely.
Right away. They also brought in Dante Moore, who a couple years ago was the number one quarterback in the country. Brought him over from UCLA. Didn't work out over there with him and Chip Kelly. So he's more of a for the future move. I don't see him playing much this year, or at least being the starter unless something happens. One of the biggest pickups they had, and they had a ton. I could have had 10 people on here on the big transfer portal pickups, but one of the biggest ones they had Jabbar Muhammad from Washington. He was a cornerback there, one of their best DBs. He had 3 interceptions on the season, 16 PBUs, passes broken up.
Yeah.
Just a great defender on that great Washington Huskies defense. And he's coming into this Oregon team that's already loaded. So they kind of addressed some of the areas that they were, possibly lacking. And I look at Oregon as being absolutely loaded. Probably, top 3 contender for the Big Ten this year. I do have 3 key Big Ten games that I want to talk about.
Okay.
First of all, October 12th, they're going to host Ohio State. The Buckeyes are coming to town October 12th. Huge, massive game, national implications, Big Ten implications, one of the biggest games of the year. Welcome to the Big Ten. They could make a statement right out of the gates for that game.
Well, and it's always been, you wait for, and don't take this poorly Penn
yeah.
State fan.
Sure.
You wait for the Ohio State-Michigan game.
Yeah.
I feel like every year in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Now we can say, yeah, Ohio State and Michigan's going to be great. But I think this year, Ohio State and the Ducks is going to be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited for that game. I'm glad we get to see it during the regular season. It's not guess what it may have been in a college football playoff scenario.
And that really highlights these 4 teams coming to the Big Ten. And what your point you just said really highlights how different the Big Ten is going to be and what a step up it is adding these 4 teams. Think about it this way: Ohio State, they're gonna play at Oregon this year. They're going to play at Penn State this year, and then they end the season hosting their rival Michigan, who's beat them three times in a row.
Right.
Those are 3 huge games for a marquee program like Ohio State. So, great way to start their Big Ten schedule, start their Big Ten season. And then, so after that, on October 12th, November 2nd, they're going to host, or actually, they're going to travel to the Big House, travel to Ann Arbor, and play Michigan in the Big House. Again, another big matchup. We don't know exactly what to expect from Michigan last year.
Yeah.
With Harbaugh moving on, they're going to do a lot of the same things. Going to be a running team, ground and pound. Who knows what their quarterback's going to be like? They got a lot of talent. They lost a lot of people, but they got a lot of talent on the team. That's going to be another huge test on the road. And that's the thing. Oregon has all this talent. Can they play in the Big Ten? Can they be physical enough to go and win games on the road in the Big Ten?
Yep.
Well, that's going to be a huge test. November 2nd at Michigan. Okay. I got one more that I think is just a cool atmosphere. November 16th in Madison, Wisconsin.
Ooh.
Yes,
Sounds like it could be cold.
Could be snowy. Camp Randall Stadium, great atmosphere. The kids are jumping around and all that stuff.
That's right. They do that.
They do the jump around
thing.
So
Try to make the house come down.
Exactly. A great atmosphere. Who knows what Wisconsin's going to be like next year? Luke Fickell's second year. We expected a little more out of them this last year. But you know what? If they have a good, solid team, that could be a really difficult place to play. Just a huge game. Again, welcome to the Big Ten. You got to host Ohio State. Then you got to go play at Michigan and at Wisconsin in November when could have bad weather. What do you think about that?
Well, I want to hit a couple comments from our viewers here. The first one, and I'm going to agree with Squeezed Money. He says the Ducks will be the best of the incoming Pac teams, 100%. And my notes here, I wrote, they're going to be the litmus test for anybody that wanted to know what would the Pac be like in the Big Ten. Check out what the Ducks do this year. I hate to say it's all on one year, but as good as we think they're going to be against the Michigans and the Ohio States and whatnot, that's the litmus test. If anybody ever wondered what the upper echelon of the Pac was going to be like with the upper echelon of the Big Ten, you're going to get that answered mostly this year with the Ducks. And I'm going to be a Ducks fan for that. I know you're a Big Ten guy. I'm going to be a Ducks fan for most of that. The other thing, Steven asks, he brings up Ryan Day, somebody we've talked about a few times, and he says Ryan Day has to step up coaching in the game that matter most, a.k.a. Michigan. I said this is do or die. I've said in the past. This is it for Ryan Day. They have got to perform. Ohio State has to go deep into the college football playoffs. And by deep, I think I mean the national championship game. That's how deep I think he needs to go. I'm a Ryan Day fan. I just like the way he coaches. I appreciate his press conferences. I'm a man that words matter to me. And when coaches talk and the way they present themselves, that matters. And do I have a soft spot for Ryan Day? I guess I kind of do. I know that hurts you because I'm talking about Ohio State coach. But what are your thoughts there on Ryan Day?
So I have conflicted feelings on Ryan Day. First of all, like you look at his record, and if you're not comparing it to Urban Meyer, his record at Ohio State has been fantastic. Problem is he's following Urban Meyer, who came in and turned that program from a hey, we're a top 10 team most of the years and we compete for a national championship every now and then, and to a we expect to be in the national championship game every single year.
Right.
And he hasn't quite lived up to that Urban Meyer expectation. On the other hand, I totally understand when people say Ryan Day was born on third base and acted like he hit a triple, because he was handed the keys to a well-oiled machine, just an absolute juggernaut, monster of a team, monster of a program. And he's just basically been keeping it in neutral. I mean, he hasn't really fallen back, but he hasn't done, It's like handing someone the perfect weapon and they just kind of like look at it and don't do much with it. So I understand. So I understand both perspectives.
I get that if you're an Ohio State fan and you want to be a national champion.
Yeah.
But to be a perennial top, whatever they are, 2, 3, 4, like they're staying in neutral as a top 3 team every year. That's hard for me to swallow, right? Like, I understand your point, but that's
he has a lot of
built
built-in advantages. I think.
Yeah, he does. I get that.
Coaches who have to build a program from the ground up, they earn a little more respect. Ryan Day he hasn't done anything. To me, he hasn't done anything to say he's a bad coach, but he hasn't done anything to say he's a great coach either. He's just kind of there.
You know what coaches do that build a team from the ground up and that are awesome?
Move on to another program.
Yeah, they go get more money from Alabama. That's what they do.
Well, maybe, but Dan Lanning didn't necessarily build the Ducks from nothing because they had that Nike money or whatever.
Right.
But he has turned them into a powerhouse, and when he had those opportunities, he stayed.
Understand. I broad brushed it.
Yes.
Like I tend to do sometimes. The other thing, Big Ten, and then we'll get to some other stuff. Steven again asked about Indiana. He sees that, where was that one at here? I know he talked. Oh, yeah, Indiana could slowly improve the next few years. Do you have any thoughts on Indiana right now?
I really thought Tom Allen was a really good, solid coach. Now he was more of a defensive-minded coach. Could Indiana do well? Yeah, they could. You never know. I forget his name now, but he was the IUP coach and then JMU.
I got Canzano in my head.
Yes.
We'll get to that a little bit later.
Signetti. Fantastic coach. He can recruit. He can, so I don't have a lot of faith as far as Indiana, the program, because I think they just are what they are. They have limited talent pool in the state. They don't put a huge investment into football. However, I do have a lot of faith in Signetti.
Yeah.
He has shown that he can go to a program and get that program punching above their weight.
Right.
So do I think that they are going to win a Big Ten championship anytime soon? No.
Yeah.
But do I think he could get them to that point where they're a thorn in, winning maybe 8 games a year, maybe 9 games on a really great year, and they're a thorn in the side of Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State and the other powers? Yes, he could do that. I think that's a very good possibility.
So let's get into a few more comments here. I know we've got Squeeze Money wants to know about how I got on the Mountain West. I'm going to save that one.
Okay.
Let's get to the pack next.
Okay.
And I know from the previous comments, there were some questions on pack. I don't remember exactly the detail of the questions, but they were asking, I think, just where we think the pack is headed, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so we actually are going to do an episode. We've taped a few episodes before going live tonight, so tomorrow we're going to drop an episode on FSU because there's a lot of stuff going on there. So if you're interested in that, we'll have an FSU episode tomorrow. And then Friday we're going to have a pack episode kind of based on the Canzano. That's why his name was in my brain. Mm-hmm. Some of his reporting here recently around the Mountain West and the WCC. I'm going to go back to the last episode we did, which was the commissioners. It was the press conference with the new commissioner, Teresa Gould and President Schultz. I found that fantastic. Hopefully you saw that episode. I'm sure the people that are on here, you guys know the Mountain. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm going to go back to that, excuse me, and say that's where I'm at right now. I think they want to get through this season. They have next year figured out from a scheduling standpoint. They have time, and I don't want to give away some of what we talk about on Friday's episode, but they have time to do this more of the right way than in a rushed way. And everything that especially Kirk Schultz is saying, they're going to be taking their time, looking at all their options, and then moving forward from there. I don't see anything happening with them quickly in terms of what comes next. They've got this nice bridge, and they're going to use it. So
I agree, and I love that term, a bridge. They kind of build a bridge to the future. You should definitely watch our pack episode that'll be released later this week. We really get into this in a lot more detail. But I'll just say my vision of what I think is most likely to happen, talked about this on some other episodes, is I think we are going to see the rebuild of a premier West Coast conference. Okay, whether that however that exists. We talk about mergers and we talk about reverse mergers and we talk about poaching this or that. I think The leadership of the Mountain West is really great. I really have a lot of faith in the Pac-2, their leadership, and the new commissioner there. And to me, and there's some room in there with the West Coast Conference to look and see what they have going on. But I think out of all of that and out of the ruins of that, we are going to see a rebuilt premier conference on the West Coast.
Yeah.
That's going to have to, either the entire Mountain West and those two, something like that. I don't know what it'll be called. I don't know that it'll be just called the Pack anymore, because I think this is going to be something new in some way. And that's where I think we're most likely headed. And I think there's a really good market for that, a really good opportunity. So, but watch our episode. We talk about that more in depth.
Right. And so we got a new commenter here, Benson Johnson. Mountain West football is being underestimated right now. You're on the right channel. I completely agree with you. I am a Mountain West cheerleader, as I've said before. Mountain West homer, if you want to call me that, whatever. But I completely agree. Underrated. And, we do all things Mountain West and Big Ten. So stick around here, because you're going to hear me talk a lot about the Mountain West and how I think things are on the up for them come the new college football playoff time.
Me too, and I will say I think this new 12-team playoff is a huge opportunity for the Mountain West to prove themselves. There's a lot of, and we could see that with a Fresno, we could see that with a Wyoming, we could see that with a Boise, whoever, Air Force, to really have a good season this coming year, win the championship, and get that G5, whatever you want to call it, that G5 spot in the playoff, and really earn some respect from the conference. I think this is a great, exciting time. I really, and I don't, before 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about the Mountain West, so, really, but I was just watching the last couple of years on CBS, SN, and Fox Sports 1 at night, just some great football out there, and I think it's a great opportunity right now for the Mountain West.
And speaking of college football playoff, I wanted to bring up as well some new reporting from Ross Dellinger today that in terms of these auto qualifiers, there was all this talk about a new, 3 or 4 for the Power, or at least the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe 2 for the ACC and the Big 12. Today it came out that they're still looking at 5 auto qualifiers. One from each of the Power Fours and the 1 guaranteed G5. So you've got the 5 auto qualifiers, and then everything else, the 9, is going to be at-large bids. That is the perfect situation for the Mountain West and all Group 5 schools, in my opinion. The perfect situation. When I saw that, I texted it to you right away. I went, perfect, that's what we want. Everybody's focused on the money distributions and all that, and I get it. That's, I think, to your point, the Big Ten and the SEC, they want every last percent, every last penny that they can get out of this. And were they using that maybe as leverage for, what they're going to get out of the AQs and stuff? I love the 5-9 model for the AQs. I hope that is what happens.
So I want to address Chad Bracey. He has had a couple comments here. Chad says there are several big things coming soon, ACC wise. I agree. Of course, keep an eye on FSU, but also keep an eye on some subtle posturing by Clemson, USC, and Notre Dame in the next 2 months. Dellinger is sniffing around on it. So
sounds dirty.
Yes. So for that, I have a couple comments. And normally in our regular episodes, we really try and stick to facts. I did put out, there's some rumors that I heard regarding FSU. We put that on the FSU episode.
Right.
I will say I've been hearing lots of rumblings regarding the ACC teams to the Big Ten. For those, if you haven't watched our other episodes, we live in Pennsylvania. Through my normal, regular, everyday job, I have some connections in the Penn State program, in the administration, and in the athletic department. And so some of the things that they've told me have led me to believe in the past, just basically about the interest in Florida State and North Carolina, about the Big Ten wanting to kind of build their market down the East Coast. It's something that they're interested in. But lately, I'll give you a rumor, something that we talked about in our other episode. What I heard recently, directly from a source within the athletic department, is that they are planning right now for Florida State to be a member of the Big Ten and start Big Ten play in either the 2026 or 27 football year. I know some FSU fans want to see it like next year or 2025. What my contacts at Penn State are telling me is there's no possibility that the 24 and 25 schedules are set But they basically have gotten the word from the Big Ten offices that they need to start planning, looking at schedules, providing input to the league on Florida State being a league member and starting Big Ten play in either 2026 or 2027. So if they're putting that word out, that to me it just means that that's something that it's has a good likelihood of happening. It's not definite, but they're looking at it as a good possibility of happening.
Well, it goes along with the media rights deal,
Yes.
right? I mean, the timeline of all of this, and I thought this from the very beginning, the whole ACC and whomever, Clemson or anybody, it's going to go along with the current media rights deal.
Absolutely.
That's 2026. It ain't going to happen for 24.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to happen. 25, I think, is extremely unlikely. I think FSU fans want to hold on to 25.
Yeah.
But 26, I think, makes the most sense on all kinds of different fronts. So.
And so then I'll say, continuing on that with Notre Dame, what I have heard is that NBC specifically, because NBC, their production people, they talk to Penn State a lot. They want to do more games there. They loved the night game there last year. So they just, they get to talking. There's a lot of pressure from NBC for Notre Dame to play more Big Ten games. Does that mean that Notre Dame is joining the Big Ten? I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is something that's been going on for years. I can see it more but it just seems like, we talked about this before, the people who write the checks and pay the bills, I want to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And NBC wants Notre Dame playing more games against Big Ten. They don't want Notre Dame playing against Wake Forest and, no offense to Wake Forest, but Wake Forest and maybe North Carolina State or whoever, those other ACC teams. They want Notre Dame playing against Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
So that seems like something that could happen. And then I agree with the question here, kind of what they said. Clemson and North Carolina, I think they're just biding their time. They're letting Florida State pay all the legal bills and have all the trouble to bust that hole out of the ACC wall like the Kool-Aid man busting through. And they might just try and follow them straight out. So.
Well, and there was news this week, I think it was earlier this week, or was it the end of last week, about Clemson gearing up for their own, lawsuit.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of know that's happening. When does it happen is a whole nother story. But yeah, let FSU bust through the wall first, and you can walk through with a lot less issue, hopefully. The other thing I want to shout out to Matt Kelly, he provides some awesome trivia for us here.
Yeah.
Animal House was filmed at the University of Oregon.
Oh, very cool.
I didn't know that. It's fantastic information to know.
So, Chad Bracey mentions that the Mountain West should poach Cal and Stanford back. That's kind of a hot button issue. There's some people who are like, yeah, that would make sense. There's some other people like, no, we don't want them. They're snobs. They didn't want to play with us, whatever. I don't know what's going to happen there, but something I keep telling JY, I'm going to tell our live viewers.
Yeah.
Don't rule out Utah, okay? Utah, the news came out that they did not sign a long-term contract with the Big 12. I don't know what the Big 12 is going to look like over the next couple years. I don't have a lot of faith in the Big 12. And I think Utah is holding out hope to get that Big 10 invite.
Yep.
But I could see a scenario where the Big 10 finishes their expansion. They get FSU, maybe Notre Dame, North Carolina, Virginia, something like that. They finish their expansion. They say they're done. There's no room at the end for Utah.
Yeah.
And Utah looks around and they say, do we really want to be in this Big 12 with all these Texas schools or whatever? Is this really where we want to be? So what I'm telling for Mountain West fans, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying don't lose hope on maybe possibly bringing Utah back. If they were able to build a premier not just to the Mountain West, but if they were able to join with the Pac and build a premier West Coast conference, I think that would be very attractive to Utah as far as regionality and some of their historic rivalries.
Totally agree. As a Mountain West guy, I want absolutely nothing to do with Calford. I said on, was it the last episode? The last one, where I talked about they want nothing to do. They would never play Boise State, and they would never play somebody else. Fresno State. They would only ever play San Diego State and Colorado. Well, then, you know what? Enjoy your time at the ACC, Calford, and we'll have our fun in the premier West Coast League. That's what I have to say to that. So we're hitting the hour mark here, Steve.
Yeah.
Let's get to the last one. I'll talk about the Mountain West and why I like the Mountain West, and then we'll close out here. But I do want to just say, we've got Aloha Nate on here. He's been a longtime subscriber as well. I think we got up to about 20 or so viewers at one time. which for the Big Mountain is awesome.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it. Thank you guys for watching this episode. So let's get into my history with the Mountain West. It's not deep history, but as we've talked about, we're on the East Coast here, so East Coast time. And my favorite time to watch college football, Steve, is late night college football.
Yep.
And I feel bad for the West Coasters because they don't get late night college football. We have the luxury of watching awesome late night college football. So the good evening games for the Mountain West and what was the pack, but I got on the Mountain West, was, for us, the 10:30 games.
Yep.
And then you got your Hawaii at like 11:30, which that's a bit late for me. But, you got your 10:30 games. And so I'm watching football because it's my favorite time to watch football. I turn on the TV, and there's this freaking awesome quarterback out in Wyoming.
Yes.
Freaking awesome. And I'm going, who is this guy? He's fantastic. And I'm watching some more games, and I'm watching some more games. And I'm going, this is the best football because A, it's at 11 o'clock at night, and B, the colors of the Cowpokes are freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
I love the brown. Everything about them is fantastic. And I just fell in love with Wyoming. And of course, I'm talking about our friend Josh Allen.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody knows that. And so then I'm like, well, who's this Wyoming team and where do they play? And then I got into the Mountain West and I started educating myself on the conference. And, they're not that old of a conference anymore. What are they, 25 years, right?
Yeah.
Today, it is a big one.
I think so, yeah.
25 years. So, but anyway, which isn't, when you talk about the pack, 100 and whatever years. But, and I love their branding. I love the Mountain West. I've been to Colorado 5 times, I think it's been. Love it out there. Love Colorado, just the West. From the Rockies west, fantastic. It's a great area of our country. I want to get up to Wyoming. I have not been to Laramie. I want to get to Laradice. I am going to try hard to get there this year, looking at maybe the BYU game or the Air Force game in September. It's actually now a dream of mine. I want to get to every Mountain West stadium. Awesome. And I'll include our friends up in Oregon State and our friends up in Washington State with that. But I got to start with the Mountain West before I start expanding.
How about the new stadium they're building out in Hawaii?
I don't know if I can make it to Hawaii. You're going to have to knock me out.
I mean, if you get to all the other ones, you got, you're
going to have to drug me up to get there, Steve. But maybe we can make it out to Hawaii. Let me get to Laradice first. I want to get Air Force, Colorado State, Boise. I want to get to all of them.
Fly first class. They have plenty of booze up there.
Now, that's one way to knock yourself out, I guess. I don't know what it'll be like when I get there. But anyway, that is the short history of how JY got on the Mountain West. I just enjoy it. From here on out, I enjoy it and continue to like watching 10:30 football.
Yeah, and both you and I, we love watching late night football, Saturday nights. And I'll say, you're just one example, and they wanted to know how you became a YO fan, a Mountain West fan. But I think that really illustrates the opportunity for that premier West Coast conference. There's still a market out there. People loved Pac-12 after dark.
Yeah.
Mountain West football got really good ratings this year, and those on Fox and FS1 and CBSN, those 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock time slots.
Well, I was going to bring up that, not tonight, but we will be bringing it up. The G5 versus G5 Nielsen ratings.
Yes.
You are correct. The Mountain West does mighty fine for G5 schools.
And if you think about it, the big market probably, who dominates the market of college football is middle-aged dads, professionals, probably a lot on the East Coast and Midwest. We're busy. We got to take our wives to apple picking so they can do their Instagram photos. We got band competitions. We got hockey games. We got all that stuff. So, Mountain West and Pac football gives us that opportunity. We finally get to sit down 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night and watch some great football.
And Squeeze Money says, the West Coast is a great place too, because you wake up 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's college football. Yeah. So I get that. I wake up, drink my coffee, and watch some college football at 9 a.m.
Awesome. I can eat breakfast and watch football at the same time. I'm in.
We're moving to the West Coast, Steve. Okay. For the months of September through December.
Okay.
Let's go to the West Coast.
Okay.
Get a place in either northern Colorado, southern Wyoming.
I'm down.
All right. Maybe someday. All right. Well, we'll put a fork in it. Let me just make sure. Oh, here we go. Powder River Letterbuck went to the Border War last year. Awesome place to see a game and the best college town I've been. See now, He's reeling me in. They're trying to get me to Wyoming.
Which one's border war?
That was the
State
CSU versus Wyoming in Wyoming.
Very cool.
I wish I wouldn't have read that. Now I'm jealous.
You just have to go.
Well, 2 years it'll be back in
2
Wyoming.
years, yeah.
Maybe we get to Laramie for BYU. I go back. I go to the border war and CSU. I hit them both this
Sounds
year.
like a great idea.
I don't think my wife will allow it.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyway, hey, with that, we really appreciate you guys for watching. Here on the Big Mountain, we do everything Big Ten, Mountain West, PAC, Lord knows ACC FSU. That'll be our update tomorrow. Will be ACC FSU. Again, another. It's a PAC West Coast or PAC West Coast Conference Mountain West episode on AKA Canzano's reporting on Friday. We'll get that out, and we got a lot more to do with the ACC because they're going off the rails with filings right now.
We will be plugged into these court cases going on in North Carolina, Florida. I guarantee.
So with that, hey, we thank you guys for watching here on the mountain, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.